right, we are live. It is 12/24, 2023. Infinite Plane Radio, open phones for open minds, and we're even open to closed minds, compartmentalized minds, because we're studying the general mental landscape. And every true believer, every massified mind, every true MSM fundamentalist gives us a gateway to understanding the program, the matrix itself, as they are reflections of it. We just sent out live stream notifications, except text alerts are still waiting for the company to be registered with the cell phone companies. It's a new security measure Big Brother put into place to protect them and their interests from people like us. But no matter, we'll be back. Text alerts will resume within the next 24 hours. No big deal. Let's see who has arrived. All right, we have Twitch. Wahoo Freeman, appreciate the sale. By the way, if you go to infiniteplane.media or any of the sites, you can get press passes now. I have them in-house. And the textbooks are arriving. AutoHoax 101 arrives in 2 days. Been waiting on that. I've been damming the flow of books. I haven't been pushing the book like I want to because I'm about to do a tour. But I really wanted to get all of the original orders out first. And there was some delays for a few reasons, for good reasons. Specifically, the documentary crew that came down here, I thought, what an opportunity to advertise the book. So whenever that comes out, and it was filmed in September, so I don't know what the timeline is, but when it comes out, we should see a bit of interest in what we are doing here. And there's, they say there's no such thing as bad publicity, and I tend not to agree with that, but in this case, I do agree. There's a great separation happening here, and it's coming soon. As we enter into 2024, we're going to see all of those who still have that latent hopium addiction flooding the polls, and they're going to leave the truth behind. And I was listening to Timcast today, and they open up with a conversation about flat Earth. And the first thing they do, and I think this is great, is they draw a line between them and those who are willing to let go of a false sense of certainty. And if you can't let go of your faith in the screen, you'll never arrive at truth. And that's fine. They're on the wrong side of the screen. But one of his co-hosts, we're talking about Tim Pool, brought up the flat earth topic, and Tim was like, you know what? The only thing that they have in their favor, or they believe, is that the earth is accelerating 30 feet per second. Like, where does it even get this from? Flat Earth Society? Like, this is 2023. If you're still attacking the straw man, you're either controlled opposition or you're a terrible researcher. But this is coming from someone who's entertained the Q shaman, for example. So to have no information, to be completely ignorant about a model, and then to argue against it, it strikes me as either intellectually lazy or he's gatekeeping because they're afraid it might open a can of worms, which is what I think. Because if you brought me into a conversation about flat Earth, I would say you cannot have an intellectually honest conversation about our cosmology unless you account for how we arrive at our worldview. And it's not just through holy books, it's not just through perception, it's all augmented through the screen. And it's been the case for such a long time that if you're not accounting for the filter, the manipulation, movie magic, the intrinsic illusory nature of mass media, then you can't really arrive at certainty without reality testing. And it just happens to be that the perspective of the world from so-called outer space is something that we cannot independently verify. So when we look to the sources of information to provide us with that, well, they're giving us information, they're giving us images, they're giving us things that give us a lot of reason to doubt what they're even telling us. So I've let go of that certainty, which doesn't mean that I automatically believe in some ridiculous straw man model. It just means I don't believe the official model. There's a big difference. Shape agnosticism. All right, we're joined by Polly Coffin, Cubstar, Peace Circle 360. JC says, Happy Holidays, IPS, Into the Beyond, Happy Saturnalia. Yeah, and this is Infinite Plane Saturn Day on Sunday. We missed yesterday because I was working on a bunch of artwork, restocking the eBay store, and preparing for 2024 early. And when I say tour, we're talking about really focusing on this fault line or the flat line, because there is a line where we have controlled opposition. They'll say things like predictive programming, They'll throw out terms to try to hook everyone in as though they're the cutting edge, but they won't go over that edge. And we've already been there, done that, and we've revealed that all that exists beyond their worldview is knowledge about how worldview formation actually happens. And that's the stuff that the public is kept ignorant about. What I'm calling now the digital hoodwink. The public lives in a wilderness of darkness by design. They are considered to be profane. We happen to have some insights because we've managed to put some pieces together. And we're going to continue to do so in 2024, but more importantly, I want to get everyone who is on this off-world stage perspective to synchronize. There's this alt media, which I consider to be part of the mainstream, but there is no alt. There is no outsider media. Well, there is now. It's parallel media. And I say parallel because we're not antagonistic. We're not anti-media. We're not regurgitating mainstream stories with a new spin, but rather we're investigating the infrastructure of mediation itself, the media, the narration, and how the news-bent reality actually works. And there's no question that reality is being news-bent. To say otherwise is to make an argument from ignorance, and we've been studying this stuff in detail, so we're not arriving at things from speculation. This isn't conspiracy theory. It's not paranormal. It's mass media analysis and deconstruction, and we've been doing it long enough to where we predict predictive programming. We're like, watch this Obama movie. It's going to have stuff attached to it immediately, and it did. Tesla cars being recalled, Chinese cyber hackers getting into our infrastructure, blackout in New York. Always the same pattern. And pattern recognition is a thought crime these days. So in that sense, we're all kind of marked. It's just a matter of time until they brand it that. And that's kind of what they're doing with this idea of the mentally ill shooter radicalized by the internet. They're trying to say the internet is too wild of an environment for people with weak mental immune systems, and it turns them into killers. That's been an argument for some time. And if their argument is that people with weak immune systems need to be protected from the healthy, then they've already made that case. Because the public accepted the premise with the COVID lockdowns. They're going to accept the premise for internet lockdowns based on mind viruses, which are all fake and manufactured. But they're going to go for it. You can read between the lines. JC, I said, I'd love to get the book, but I'm in the UK. I'm going to be making it available through my eBay store, which allows me to ship it internationally quite easily. So that will happen. And what's more, the IPS Insider publication is going to be available through distribution nodes all over the plane. So if you're out there in the UK, you're a Press Pass carrier, and you want to be a distributor for the freemium version, which I think will turn into real subscriptions, I'm ordering a stack of those, and I'll be distributing them as monthly. So you just need to get into the list, and I will make sure that you get copies. But anyway, I'll make sure we have the book available everywhere. And I'm making it only available as a textbook right now, as a hardback. It's part of the IPS Institute for Advanced Media Deconstruction, Autohoaxology 101, which is the basic framework that makes the case that if you're not preemptively assuming everything to be fake until proven real, if fakeable with an obvious political agenda attached, then you're not skeptical. And that there are no examples of skeptical media because it's not skeptical of its own claims. It's an echo chamber. It's a closed system, and we've made this case. They actually operate within a fictional universe. And what we're doing is we're stepping outside of their fictional universe and operating outside of it, making no attempts to say, oh, we just agree to disagree. No, you can say we agree to disagree, sure, but that doesn't mean anything. It's kind of a thought-stopping cliche. Because if you're wrong, you're wrong. And you may be entitled to your own opinions, but not your own facts. And what we're doing here is we're operating from a place of objectivity. Another one of these soon-to-be banned words, objectivity. Because everything's subjective, all beliefs are equal, reality's fluid. No, I don't think so. We're not Mandela affected up in here. Joined by X322. JC says, people can be blinded by their faith. Oh yeah, their faith in screen. It's the new world order unifying religion. It's the new universal faith. Catholic means universal, but it is the universal faith with a universal heaven. And it is truly faith. what I mean by that is there's this relationship between the pundits or the experts on TV coming out of the black cube and the believers that is analogous to that between believers in the pulpit, I mean, in the seats, and then your priest in the pulpit. It's a religious system. It really is, and it's a new priesthood. And in 2020, what they did is they elevated the NWO priesthood, this universal priesthood from the cult of scientism, as we're the ones who can conquer today's devil, aka COVID. We can conquer today's sin, aka the virus. And they established themselves. In fact, COVID Akbar, because all the religions shut down except for scientism. And everybody stood around that black cube or the black screen and took their orders. Put on the mask, did the 666 thing with their spacing out between one another. It was all a ritual, if you ask me, to install a new priesthood. And it's even what followed after. It was never about the thing, it was about the fear. Fear of the other. You have pure bloods afraid of goo bloods. You have goo bloods afraid of walking super spreaders. You have people afraid of people because of their ideas. And you saw what they did. They created well, they didn't create a rift, they defined it. I mean, it was already there. And they just found a way, an issue, to perfectly show how we are split down the middle. It's this crack in everything I've been talking about. Reminds me of cell staining. You know, when you, with a microscope, you throw a stain in there so you can see everything in color. And what they did with that issue is they made it clear where you could no longer hide it. And it's a buildup. We've talked about this buildup from 9/11, where now they can see through your clothes. Naked body scanners at the airport. TSA can grope you. So they moved in, eroding privacy and the expectation of privacy. Now they've moved it a bit forward to make the case that, well, not only do we need to know what's in your pockets or in your underwear or your shoes, but we need to know what's in your blood. Made that case. The next step is what's on your mind. And this is where you get into mind viruses and where you get into, I mean, this is again getting into the idea of your privacy is a threat. The private citizen, private Discord servers, or private telegrams, where you have private diaries. All these things are now a threat to the public. Okay, let's continue here. Demetra 101 says, Wiki says George Floyd, they changed it to 929. It's not a Mandela effect. It was reported as 846. The 846 movement was based on that. Everything Dave Chappelle said. So they set the story and the template and coordinated it with the setting the sun. Later they added some seconds to it, but it's sort of like sometimes they'll report 33 died, and then later it's 35. But it just seems like when they initially stamp the story, you got to take a snapshot. What are the first pictures that you see coming out? That's usually what I do. I take a snapshot. Like when Floyd's and Chauvin had their little debut of their street theater, the first thing I looked at were the initial pictures. And it's like, oh, look, there's Floyd with a corona, with coronaviruses behind him in the picture. You could just kind of see the template rolling out. And the time change on Floyd in no way changes the meaning of the ritual. Again, how it connects to 9/11, and it connects to so many other things. Like, remember Jayland Walker? Jayland Walker shot by 8 cops 46 times. Or Amir Locke, where he's in the Twin Cities, but it's a mirror, and it was 6:48 at the exact timestamp, a mirror of 8:46. We have many examples of them using the same code. Dave Chappelle's 8:46 is a performance where he talked about how he's reliving the historic role of his grandfather, who apparently did something in the White House advocating for a victim of lynching. And he talked about how I think it was his time of birth tied into 8:46. But yeah, there was this big thing about that number where they really made this stamp on all of our minds. This number meant something. It was on everyone's mouths. In fact, on the 19th anniversary of 9/11, Derek Chauvin was in court. And on that morning, Benjamin Crump, Forrest Crump, there's not a historically important psyop he's not at. Benjamin Crump was there wearing an 846 mask, and all of Floyd's family 846 masks. Yet, at the same time, across the country, at 8:46 a.m., there was a moment of silence. and people went out in their front yards, and there's a moment of silence for 9/11 at 8:46. So you had these two different events, the George Floyd, Derek Chauvin thing, and 9/11, both being celebrated at the same time with the same code. Another key, I think, to it might be that 8:46 is the time of day that Mercury was rising on that morning. 9/11 is also the New Year. It's New Year's Day on the Coptic calendar. I mean, there's many reasons why they use these numbers. Again, the sun set in the Twin Cities that day, which is very significant because the sun setting represents the death of the sun god at the hands of the darkness, Prince of Darkness. So Derek Chauvin and Floyd played multiple. They represent multiple things. For example, yeah, it represents oppression and the oppressor in the class warfare sense. Western chauvinism oppressing the poor, but also the BLM response, which would represent communism or the Marxist revolution against the capitalist oppressor. Then you have this other element to it, which has to do with the occult side and the death of the sun, the dismemberment. I can't breathe. There's stories where Osiris is suffocated in a coffin. Floyd was put in a golden casket. I mean, what do you make of that? All of it's very interesting when you look at the symbolism of the kneeling as well, and how that was actually preceded by Colin Kaepernick, who you could argue is the titular head of BLM. So he started the kneeling. And we've spoken about him recently because he was the quarterback in Super Bowl 47, which was the Blackout Bowl, which was originally reported at 33 minutes. Look at the USA Today. Blackout Bowl went dark for 33 minutes. But now, if you look at the Wikipedia, it's 34 minutes. See, 34 is the new 33. 43 is the new 42. They're having to change things because we're so adept at putting stuff together that they have to muddy the waters, but we've already seen through it. And the 929 could mean something else as well. There could be another meaning to the permutation of it. Interesting things about it, 525 Memorial Day, but 330 days later, Derek Chauvin gets convicted, which was on a 420. And again, 4-2. Like Maurice Hall, George Floyd's drug dealer, the guy in the passenger seat was 42. His twin, Stephen Jackson, 42. They throw 42s all over these race war psyops. Rosa Parks was 42. Jackie Robinson, Mr. 42. Very common throughout all of these things from the beginning. Diana South says, a 4-foot golden casket had to chop him in half in order to fit. Yeah, I saw it. Maybe it was just a bad angle. But he also had 4 funerals paid for by Floyd Mayweather, the boxer. And then 1 year later, to the day of the funeral, Floyd Mayweather fought with, was it Logan Paul? I mean, the whole thing just gets really weird. All these celebrities involved in these psychological operations just add on to the fact that it's theater and it's multi-layered. So it's the political side, but then there's the occultic side. And I find that side to be almost more interesting. Like the precise astrological timing. And then you get into the names. Like Derek. If you look at Derek, there's this, you go to the etymology of Derek, and it's like there's a German, I think it was a hangman. A hangman who was known for having invented, or rather improved on the gallows. In other words, he added something to it that they actually now call a derrick. So it's a name that comes from a really infamous hangman who hanged 3,000 people. So there you have a 9/11 connection there as well, in addition to the 846, Twin Cities, Twin Towers. But Derrick, a hangman, 1600, gallows, from the surname of London's gallows at Tyburn. But anyway, so this is this is a meaning of the name in this little play, where it's the hangman of Western chauvinism. And the Proud Boys who followed behind this, who are the opposition to BLM, call themselves Western chauvinists. So the word derrick became an eponym for the frame from which the hangman's noose is supported. So it's actually part of the gallows. Derrick, from Gothic king to cranes and oil rigs. Now, again, I'm just pointing out the symbolism here because he's kneeling, and this is after Colin Kaepernick, who later became really the I think the most glaring living example of this claim of systemic racism. That's the way they've set him up. So the fact that he started the kneeling, then Derek Chauvin does this kneeling, and then BLM picked up the kneeling right after, says there's something continuous here. There's something continuous in this story. And I think it became more clear with Colin Kaepernick's Netflix series, Colin in Black and White. And again, the fact that he was quarterback during the Blackout Bowl correlates to all of this, as does the fact that Beyonce was there. And in 2020, she released Black is King, based on The Lion King, which is based on Macbeth. It's really fascinating stuff if we get into the details, but the names tell you a lot. The name Colin Kaepernick comes from Nicholas. Colin comes from Nicholas. Kaepernick, Copernicus. Nicholas Copernicus. Revolution. So here you have, again, the symbolic leader, the head of BLM, or titular head. If you look at the more famous examples of people who represent that movement, and then his role in all these publications, the I Know My Rights organization, you could argue that he is the titular head of the movement. And just looking at this picture of revolutionary Marxism, then it tends to make sense. And if you remember in 2020, Ben and Jerry's did a Change the World. And this is all wordplay. They did Change the World ice cream, where they put Colin Kaepernick's face on it. And if you look at the word world, it's spelled to reference, like world, like ice cream and world chocolate. But we're also talking about the world itself. And the name Nicholas Copernicus refers to the world beginning its revolution, the whirling. Again, interesting wordplay. Ben and Jerry's Change the World ice cream 2020. All right, let me go through your comments. JC says, what's happening with Trump? I think they're pulling him off of the ballot in Colorado. Not that that'll stop him. Huge says, I found this channel through Brian Stavely. Oh, awesome. Brian Stavely recommended the Infinite Plane Society. Hey, we are easily, I think, the most lucid critics of the Mandela effect. I mean, we do have a very clear explanation of how people arrive at the erroneous conclusions that they do, and we do it in a non-judgmental way. This is almost like Mandela Effect Anonymous. In fact, we have Tim Ostman around sometimes who does the Mendoza Hotline. So if you're still in that deception, we can pull you out. It's quite easy. It's all about false memories. All right, let's get back on track. There's a lot of swatting going on right now. So Jack Posobiec got swatted, which is obviously fake. Steve Bannon before, he's been swatted. Has Tim Pool been swatted lately? I'm still waiting for somebody to swat Alex Stein. That would be great. MTG, she said if she had opened the door with her M15 or M16 or something, they would have shot her. It's like that never would have happened. Swatting is a right-wing psyop. Lefties never get swatted. But they do it whenever they need attention or whenever they want to make it look like they're important enough to get swatted. No, she didn't get swatted. She's about to get, Jack Posobiec didn't get swatted. But it was some kind of call they made. He says, okay, I just got swatted. No, this is someone else too. Tammy McDonald got swatted too. I was hanging out with my family. They said I caught my husband with another woman and shot them. And I was going to the bathroom to shoot myself. Interesting. So that's how they do it. But whenever they say they're swatted and it's like a celebrity or a politician, I tend to think that the police would contact their security first. It wouldn't just be police coming in, rappelling into the windows, and guns drawn, battering ram. It doesn't happen like that. It's not like a personal army you can just call in and they go attack. It has to get I think a judge has to sign off on it. Yeah, Kevin Mooring, swatting is the new look at me. Yeah, exactly. And if I didn't have a conscience, I'd get swatted for clicks. You know who did it? Gavin McInnes. Gavin McInnes, who created the Proud Boys. He's the one who started it. And then, of course, the other guy, the Fed, who's serving 22 years. But Gavin McInnes faked a swatting. He faked an arrest. And one of the times that he faked it, he told Owen Benjamin in a private message. And Owen Benjamin leaked hey, that this guy's faking a swatting for clicks, and McGinnis gets mad at him for not wanting to participate on a lie like that. But they all do it, and it does work, or I think it used to work. It's supposed to give sympathy. It doesn't. I don't give him any sympathy. Like I hear about something like that, and I think Tim Pool actually. Tim Pool wasn't swatted, but next door there was some kind of a shooting, and it looked kind of fake, and he was trying to hype it up, and he tried to act scared. I listened to the extremes of the political horseshoe, left and right. I listen to libs on my left ear and right wing nuts on my right ear. I try to get a balanced perspective from the world stage and just see where they're all going because they're going in the same direction. Duas in Paris says Gavin is one of the few genuinely funny MAGA banners. Yeah, a lot of them are actually comedians first, and then they get into politics. And I think he might have started off as a comedian, or he evolved into one. Nick Fuentes, though, has gone the other direction. Nick Fuentes has gone to the point where he has no sense of irony or humor about himself. He's this incel who finally moved out of his mother's basement, but he's now talking about annihilating non-Christians. Let me go. I think I actually have something here. And this is the MAGA band going all the way medieval, where they're talking about, it's time to kill the witches. And this is a recent trend. Like Tucker Carlson talking about Satan. Well, not Satan, but dark things with aliens. Then it's Jack Posobiec talking about Satan. MTG, aliens, or Nephilim. A lot of this alien phobia. It's gone beyond xenophobia. Now they're actually afraid of literal aliens on the far right extreme, while the left is ready to embrace the alien. You notice how this works, right? The left is going to embrace them, and the right is going to fight them. Not a coincidence. They've designed things this way. It's been split this way by design on purpose. Then David Icke is even coming out talking about aliens right now. Let me bring this up because this reptilian thing is coming back, and it's kind of uniform. In fact, Tucker's bringing it up. So David Icke tweets this today. Amazing how these people are claiming there are hostile interdimensional spiritual forces influencing the human ant farm without a single mention of the man who's been ridiculed for decades for saying this and exposing the detailed evidence in a stream of books and videos. Now he's talking about Tucker. He put at Tucker Carlson, at Alex Jones. This is an extraordinary lack of respect for the one who dared speak of these things and take all the shit for doing so. Now they claim it as their own 30 years later. Disgusting. There you have it. David Icke. And he has a meme with the reptilian. I was right about current events decades ago, and I'm right about that. Laugh all you like. Interesting. But yeah, he definitely called out Tucker Carlson. And this may be coming from somewhere else as well. Jim Stewartson, who's this renowned anti-QAnon guy, believes that the reptilian thing is coming from Russia. It's Russian disinformation. Okay, let's continue. JC says, we can see they're preparing us for aliens, but any idea of when? Kevin Mooring says, Tucker says the next PSYOP is an EMP. He's in the know. Yeah, EMP is more likely for a few reasons. The electromagnetic pulse can detonate at a very high altitude, so they don't have to destroy stuff on the ground to convince people we've had a massive detonation. And then they can shut it off over an area for a period of time. And they will use this EMP, which is going to be likely either from the Chinese space plane or white nationalists working with Russia. But they're going to use this as an excuse to lock down the internet because they'll say, if it wasn't for free speech, we wouldn't have these radicals conspiring to shut down our system. So you're not getting back online until your mind has been vaxxed and you wear a mind mask. You see the agenda here. It's 2020 all over again, but it's going to be the internet equivalent. But instead of a ground zero pandemic, it's going to be ground zero EMP, high altitude nuclear blast. They're going to release the Kraken, which might be tonight. But Tucker said this. I believe General Flynn said to his close associates that there's going to be a Chinese-based EMP, and that anybody who's taken the V is going to experience like that movie Scanners. Their heads are going to explode. And he says, don't get near anybody who's been boosted because it's going to be like messy. Wear a raincoat. So EMP is likely. And then we had the Leave the Obamas Behind movie, which pretty much said as much. I mean, they really made the case. Like, when they said, when Ethan Hawke's character has the Bikini Kill shirt, and Bikini Kill, punk band, and I thought maybe there's another agenda here as well. And there might be, because Bikini referenced Bikini Islands, nuke testing, Bombshell, Barbie feminism, and Bikini Kill, I heard, and I need to look this up a little bit, but I believe their concerts, I was told, had like some kind of girls only thing, which I thought sounded kind of like Barbie feminism. I need to get some more information on that. But when the character is wearing the Bikini Kill shirt, someone says my son could sleep through a atom bomb. So right there they mention it. Well, when he says they can sleep through an atom bomb, what are they really talking about? They're talking about the Americans are going to sleep through an atom bomb, or the present youth. Like, it's just like they're not ready for it. We're asleep. Is Bikini Kill a feminist band? It said they would grow for their unapologetic feminism, taking a public stand on issues like abortion and the sex abuse of women. Okay, there you have it. So Bikini Kill on his shirt is not only a reference to the nuke, but Barbie feminism. And we've already connected the Barbie movie to the Whore of Babylon. At the very beginning, the little girls are taught to smash the heads of their baby dolls on the rocks and embrace Barbie feminism and the neutered Ken doll superfluous males. So it makes a lot of sense. But my point of it is, they've been preparing us for this eventuality. White Noise, which was all about the toxic airborne event in East Palestine, which, again, White Noise, the movie, which predicted the event. This movie, which hints at a few different things. Catastrophic. I mean, it references everything from 9/11 to the JFK assassination to the arrival of the slaves and this dynamic between the 1619 project and the 1776, MAGA reality. We're talking about a collision of worldviews. And this nuke thing is central to the story. And I happen to think that it may be suspected of being Chinese. Maybe they think that's where it's coming from, but I really think it's domestic violent extremists. Kevin Bacon's character represents this. He knew in advance to get ready for what was coming. He already had inside information, but he wasn't warning anybody. Why is that? Well, it's because he's part of the group that's going to take over Turner Diaries style. And we just had this Turning Point USA event, and I've been saying there's a connection between Turner Diaries and the Turning Point USA. All right, let's continue here. Diana South says, I thought David Icke popularized the reptilians. He really did. He kind of backed off because his books were being pulled. They accused him of anti-Semitism, which is like, that's not nice. Like, who's calling them reptilians? It wasn't David Icke. He wasn't explicitly making that connection. That was made by people opposed to Icke, who was recycling a lot of old conspiracy theories that were blaming Jews and attaching that to reptilians. But he wasn't specifically going there. I mean, he talked about the British. He talked about, who wasn't reptilian? In fact, I think he kind of made it seem like the reptilian DNA is everywhere. And it's just a matter of waking it up by doing bad things or becoming a Mason. Yeah, he actually, I was reading one of his books, Children of the Matrix, where he said that if you have the reptilian DNA and you go into these clubs, every time you attend the rituals, you're activating this reptilian DNA, and at some point it takes over. So you're basically getting possessed by degree. And by the time you're through with your 33rd degree, you're no longer the same person, but you're wealthier and more successful in the world, and you have more power. But as far as when the aliens are going to be exposed, what they're doing now seems like they're not going to do the big reveal of aliens from above. That's already happened. What they're saying is the alien invasion already happened. They're already in control. It's these people. That's kind of where they're going to. Girl says, when David Icke was asked by Eddie Bravo, so what do you think of NASA's Apollo moonwalk, real or fake? Ike replied, I haven't really looked into it. Like, okay, what happens if Ike says it's a bunch of BS? Is he going to run afoul of some NDA? What's going to happen to him? And he did put out a book where he questioned the moon and he suggested that the moon was hollow and that it was once filled with water and it dumped the water on us and gave us our oceans, or that it wasn't there, there's no record of it in certain ancient myths, and that the moon just arrived recently. So he had a lot of ideas about the moon. And that recent movie, Moonfall, directed by the same guy that did Independence Day, Roland Emmerich, who later said he regretted it. He said, I never want to do a conspiracy movie again. But Moonfall suggested that the moon landings were faked because the moon is actually a hollow craft which falls on us. And the movie was released on 2/4 and February 4th, and then exactly a year later, that Chinese space balloon was shot down, which looked like a moon in the photos. I mean, interesting coincidences. Anyone care to guess how old the savior character was, the scientist that saved the world in Moonfall? So basically, the scientist saves the world from the falling moon, but the actor, his name is, I believe, Josh Hadley. Anyone care to guess how old he was at the time that they made the movie? Again, Moonfall, if anything, I think it was mostly getting us ready for the the war in outer space, maybe satellites falling. I think there's something along those lines. It's all about conditioning. John Bradley, excuse me, not Hadley, Bradley. He was the scientist who was like agoraphobic. Moonfall, 2022 disaster film, Roland Emmerich. I think it even contains a Mandela effect. They're singing some song in the beginning. And the Mandela effect did say it's a Mandela effect, which is weird because I thought, how come misremembered song lyrics aren't just categorically accepted as Mandela effects, as reality splits? No, only certain ones, like 3 or 4 of them. But who gets to decide? It's like the Pope gets to decide what miracle is legit and what miracle is not legit. Who gets to decide which Mandela effects are legit? I mean, Nelson Mandela is dead and Ed McMahon is not around. Who's like the top authority over all Mandela effects? All right, let's get back on topic here. I asked the age of the actor who played the Savior. JC said 33. Dinah South, P. Tripper, yep. Unmediated Mind says 42. Jamitra 101 says the answer is always 33. Yeah, that's correct. That's correct. That's correct. So you got it. So let me go ahead and bring this up here. I've recently introduced to the IPS store a gold star with a 33 on it. So what I'm going to do is if you want to email me, timosmond007@gmail.com, if you're the first one, and that'd be, I believe, JC, and then I'll have the gold star sent to you. I'll just send you a free coupon, basically. But I have gold stars with the number 33 that will now go out to the first person who wins the, sometimes multiple times a day we'll have these, but usually a daily pop quiz. And generally the answer is 33. It's rare that it's not. And it's not that I'm trying to make it easy, it's just that I'm pointing out the fact that their patterns are very predictable. JC says, how's the documentary coming? Well, this is interesting, okay, I was making the point that with this textbook coming out, we need to have the information conveyed in a way that not necessarily reaching normies, but that anybody listening will understand where we're coming from, even if they disagree. There needs to be interviews where it's not a debate against, it's not devil's advocate against, but it's rather, let's try to understand where you're actually coming from when we're saying that we're looking at mass media as skeptics. So I was in the process of preparing a series of interviews, and I contacted local media, and then I had a cinematographer, and as I was preparing this, out of nowhere, this documentary crew from Scandinavia contacted me because they're doing a documentary on conspiracy theories, and they were traveling through America. They were in California at the time, so they came down here for a couple of days, at the IPS headquarters. Conveniently, it was on Labor Day, so the offices were empty, and I had full run of this place. And basically, throughout the day, they did a series of interviews, asked me a lot of questions. They filmed a live stream, and I tried to explain to them my concept of the flat Earth question and why it's not a ridiculous question. And I brought up the bigger point of worldview formation. But anyway, the documentary on the Autohoaxology 101 was sort of stalled because of that. But in the process of that, I learned a few things to put into the project that I'm working on now. But yeah, it's definitely something I'm working on, but it's a matter of like funding for the most part because I'm filming, well, I'm using a cinematographer, and then we're also filming some events that we're doing. So it's not something I'm trying to rush. In fact, I think it'll be completed over the course of 2024 because it's going to be recorded concurrent with the IPS Cyber Symposiums, where we're actually debating and discussing things that a lot of people don't think are even debatable. And you're going to see as we move forward that there aren't any intellectually honest flat Earth debates out there. It's just a clown show. It's a straw man versus a straw man. It's belief system versus belief system. And it cannot lead anywhere. And it's certainly not adding to the pool of knowledge. And it's specifically excluding the possibility of movie magic, special effects, of fakery. They're excluding that from their assessment. They're assuming that everything that comes from the space programs is scientific evidence. And it's just fantasy at this point. It's fantasy. NASAtology is just another scammy science fiction religion. Unlike Scientology, they have decent special effects, but they don't have the actors that Scientology does. Alright, let's continue. Duos Imperis says, speaking of 33 as its allusion to Ascension, has anyone watched the miniseries Ascension? The crew made to believe they were on the way to the stars, but they never left the dock. No, I never watched that. It sounds interesting. Reminds me of Orbital 9, where this person thinks they're going to an exoplanet, and their parents had to leave them because there wasn't enough oxygen. And they find out later that they're actually underneath the Denver airport because some captain falls in love with her and brings her to the surface to take her on a date. Yeah, she wasn't going to space. But it was a realistic simulation. And they can do this. And it's not about special effects, it's about liars. There's that TV show, it was a hoax, a series called Space Cadets, where 10 people are in low Earth orbit for a TV series. Well, 5 of them are actors. 5 of them are dupes. And the actors keep the dupes from realizing and talking about it and coming to the right conclusion that they're not really in space. Now, I'd never seen Ascension, but I seem to remember the commercial for it. Let me bring this up. And was this one about an incoming meteor that was going to destroy the world? I mean, these movies all kind of sound the same after a while. Now they say it's Mach 33, 33 times the speed of sound to exit the world. JC says, absolutely can't argue about ball. It needs to be a conversation about shape. Yeah, look, it's a burden of proof thing, and this is the real issue too. The person who's saying it's a ball doesn't have any evidence beyond what they can provide coming from a third party, from a screen. And the evidence of their own eyes, which they won't agree to even admit to, is that it's flat and stationary. That as a human being, as small as you are, you will always live on a stationary, seemingly endless plane. And these globies think, okay, like they think that you're coming from a place of abysmal ignorance and you never went to school or something, and they're like, if it was flat, I could just take out my telescope and look at China from my backyard. Like, you realize that there's light scattering, that there's pollution, that you cannot see an infinite distance. There's optics involved here, that it's not that simple. But it just goes to show that the assumption of the ball thing is just it's just that. When you really try to substantiate it beyond pointing at the TV screen, what do you have? Oh, boats go over the horizon. And people still fight on that one. They still fight over that one. And here's one thing. Let's say you agree with that. That, yeah, I believe that boats go over the horizon. Okay, well, there's no way that ancient Greeks could have arrived at that conclusion accurately because, from the perspective of course, a human being, we erroneously see them going over a horizon when it's really just angular resolution. If they are going over, it would be much further than humans can see. So, does getting the quote right answer for the wrong reasons even seem legit? To cite that? No. It's not a valid observation. But the real thing to me, the real question here is it's more about worldview. Like, how did we arrive at this? And when you really get down to it, if you're not including special effects, you can never arrive at the right answer, and they don't want to admit this. And I've got the Achilles heel singled out for the first IPS Cyber Symposium. It's the space station. I don't think it's a coincidence USA Today did a piece to say the space station is not underwater. The same week that the video that we did at the city council that had 500,000 hits in a couple of days, calling out the space station for being underwater. And I was highlighting bubbles in space. They did a lot of damage control on bubbles in space. Oh, that doesn't prove anything. That's space debris. Okay, fine. And a lot of them are willfully ignorant to the point where it's almost like it's either nefarious or they're reality impaired. It's like they're damaged, truly damaged. I think it's damaged, indications of damage when someone looks at something and they cannot allow themselves to say what they see. Like, okay, I'm perceiving this, but I'm going to go ahead and instead go with what they're telling me. Mousegate is a huge one, which we will address. But the bubbles in space, we gave them a pass on that. Like, let them have their answers, but they cannot answer this one. On the spacewalks, if you look at any video on any of the helmet cams, you see light loss, diffusion, evidence of underwater photography, cinematography. In fact, I was looking at this night dive video with the scuba divers filming manta rays underwater. Pitch black except for his light. And I saw bubbles that look exactly like the bubbles I've seen outside the space station. And it's well known that it's right there floating in the Neutral Buoyancy Lab somewhere in Texas. Ellen Smith says, "What's the latest with you outing Goldfinch?" Oh yeah, that's done. Fait accompli. He is a co-defendant on my lawsuit against Google. And Google YouTube is going to help me to get his address and all that, because I think they're going to want to make him responsible for everything. Even though he did use their legal department in order to falsely seize my copyrights and ban my channel for years, I don't know if YouTube is going to YouTube or Google, if they're going to say that they're actually culpable, if there's an individual there who signed off on it because they got tricked. And if they were defrauded by Goldfinch, if they fell for a trick, then maybe he's the one responsible. And it's certainly criminal. And we are talking about criminal actions, even though I've taken this to a civil suit. I mean, generally, if there's criminal activity, you do criminal first, then civil. But in this case, because this person is kind of a ghost, I've had to go the other way. In fact, originally I sued him as a John Doe because I didn't know his name. I had to do that to get his name. But anyway, where it's at right now, we're waiting for the first hearing. There is a case number. It's Civil Unlimited. And I hit Google for 5 million. And I think that should be plenty of incentive for them to get this person's information to the court so that we can have him declare his assets and have him served appropriately. There's other stuff as well beyond the civil case. There's the cyber squatting, and there's 5 years of criminal activity, all of it very well documented. But I think it's going to happen in 2024, and as Unmediated Mind says, it's the darn Red Ranger curse coming back around. And there is a Red Power Ranger curse. If you go back, all the Power Rangers, whether it's drowning old people after forcing them to sign documents giving up property, or self-castrating in jail, murdering friends, beating family, suiciding, multi-million-dollar COVID fraud, and now this. all of the red Power Rangers have come to very bad ends, and he's going to be the latest. All right, let's continue here. Going through my Minds.com, David Icke being his right. MTG is out here hyping up a new civil war. She says, America is in a constitutional crisis. The admin is enabling a full-scale border invasion and harboring illegal migrants. The courts are engaging in judicial tyranny. The government is politically weaponized against the people. Soon, national divorce may be our only option. Just something else to add to the mix there, the national divorce. So we've been talking about Biden taking down the Civil War Reconciliation Memorial, blood on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial, Captain America, who starts the Civil War in the movie, attempting to break into a military base with an AR-15. There's a lot of Civil War rhetoric going on right now. What do we have here? Okay, this is interesting. David Icke is doing some good work on Twitter. And he is calling out some of these spammers. And I think he's onto something. He's pointing out a post from Illuminati Bot. So Illuminati Bot is one of these, basically a spam bot on Twitter. And Icke posts, this has received past 1 million views from a source you should not trust to tell you the time in a room full of clocks. This is clickbait. It's an operation following on from News Punch, all from the same source. The writer here does not exist. It's a made-up fiction I exposed a decade ago. These sites have done enormous harm to the credibility of alternative media. And I've been talking about this, what you would call an active measure, to use a Russian intelligence term, the liquefaction of reality. And for Icke to call it out, it's a pretty big deal. What we're seeing here is a flooding of the zone with disconnected things that may or may not be true, but ultimately it's just noise without any structure, and there is no structure. They've destroyed alt media. So he's right here. They have destroyed the credibility of alternative media. But I don't have a problem with that because we are not alternative media here whatsoever. I think this is actually a good thing. All right, continuing. JC, anything to look forward to next year? Well, next year, what I'm mainly looking forward to is a monthly issue of the IPS Insider tabloid, which is going to be used to synchronize anybody who gets it in terms of applied skepticism, who isn't covered in fake blood from the mainstream media, who isn't crying for fake dead people, falling for false flags, taking menthol-laced red pills. We're going to cut away from all the hopium addicts and the reality fluid. Somebody needs to stand up for objective reality, and that's really going to be us, as you'll see. And what my objective here again is to grow the parallel media to such a size, to such an extent that anybody with any common sense, any grasp of skepticism, who hasn't put on or internalized the screened version of reality's hoodwink, we'll get them all on board. That's mainly the objective for 2024, as you'll see, because what's happening is all of the truthers are going to line up to vote. We saw this in 2016. The Q movement took a lot of people who were seeing through fake news and dragged them back to the booth, dragged them into Q, dragged them into mysticism and false flag theories, and pulled them back in through the screen into the nightmare. I mean, that's how it works. The average person, the normie, they have their nose to the screen and they live that way. The conspiracy theorists get pulled in, so they're actually in the matrix, experiencing the nightmare even more immersively. It's an immersive illusion, just like that TV show Space Cadets. And it's a false, illusory concept of the world propped up by a bunch of liars who are able to drown out the people who actually know what's going on, and it helps to prevent people from arriving at any sense. Just like on Twitter, like what Ike's pointing out, there's so much of a flood here that you can't arrive at anything coherent. In the Space Cadet TV show, those 10 astronauts pretending to go through space, well anyway, 5 of them thought they were, because the other 5 kept them distracted. They were gate kept. And what I'm pointing out here is that the mainstream media is incredibly gatekept. Alternative media too, and alternative media has a very special task here of keeping everyone involved in blue pill politics, having them face the center as though that's what their life is now about. So instead of facing outward, they're facing back in. They're just taking in a lot more information and believing a lot more stuff. Whether you're woke or red pill, you're deeper in it. And I think in 2024, we're going to see a lot of the truthers kind of go deeper into the matrix, falling for more psyops that fit their particular bias. It's a total loss of objectivity. Like where people like, look, I mean, if you understand what auto hoaxing actually means, what we're really positing here, it's not like maybe the next thing's real. Maybe the next thing's real. I've seen this approach where people will say, well, this shooting might be real. Let's wait and see. Well, you don't say that when we're looking at rocket launches. Hey, maybe the next Elon Musk rocket's really going to space. Maybe the next one is. No, you've categorically debunked the space program and all of its various events. And we've categorically debunked mass shootings as televised through the mainstream media networks. I'm not saying violence doesn't happen, but there's a very specific way that they publicize these things. It's like a TV show. It's like an episode of Scooby-Doo. They introduce the bad guy, unmask him at the end, resolution, and it's totally fake. No presumption of innocence. The mass media is the judge, jury, executioner, and before the end of the episode, you've already read through his manifesto and you know who to blame. And they're always forgettable. That last shooting in Prague, for example, the one thing about that one I'm taking away from it is that there was blood on the steps, reportedly. Blood on these marble steps that are iconic, and I thought that's interesting. You've got bloody steps here. Meanwhile, these pro-Hamas protesters put fake blood on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial. Maybe there's a connection there. A sniper on a balcony, blood on steps, Lincoln Memorial, blood on steps here. There's a connection, I think. Maybe more foreshadowing. Thank you, Zinvelis. Penguinzilla Wellness Check. Appreciate that very much. That will go right into our text alerts, which are going to resume as soon as I get us verified with the phone companies. Now, for David Icke to say he's never looked into the moon landing, that's a huge dodge, and I find that to be kind of shady. Someone once cornered him on the flat earth topic, and he kind of dodged it as well. Why is it? I mean, are they told not to talk about it? And if you're told not to talk about something, would it make you think that it's more likely to be true? Like, why is Tim Pool misrepresenting the topic as a kooky, ridiculous model that you can just completely ignore? Why is that? Why don't they want to have an intelligent, informed conversation about what we're really raising here? It's because they would have to expose something. The big secret, the digital hoodwink. It has to do with visual illiteracy, illusions that the public are being sold. All right, let's see here. Demetria says Corona ended on 5/5. The coronation was on 5/6. Oh, I didn't know that. It ended on 5/5. Coronation was on 5/6. Fascinating connections, though, when you look at these dates. And what's the next one? The next big thing to look forward to, I think, is the New Year's, the ball drop, the worship of Sirius. Every year it's worth pointing it out. Although still, we're still kind of in this window. Leave the world behind, insinuated winter solstice. This would be the time that it happens, whatever it's going to be. Fake nuke, real nuke, EMP, the mental equivalent of a nuke, some kind of operation. But it would be now. And I pointed out that it was the summer solstice where the imploding Titan corresponded to the nuke metaphor of Godzilla's implosion in that movie. So putting this all together, I'm suspecting a sea-based attack, probably even hinted at in the movie Leave the World Behind, the flood references, the references to Matt Perry. But we're still in that window, as in the next 24 hours. And I'm not a doomsayer, but if we are going to use predictive programming as a predictive model, it would make sense that we just point out that, yeah, they haven't indicated this Christmas. All right, let's continue. Selena said, on the 19th anniversary of 9/11 in 2020, guess how many worldwide COVID-19 deaths were recorded? 911,000 and 19 million recoveries. Yeah, I recall all those redundancies. Even the Drudge reported on them. And that was, of course, the day that Derek Chauvin was on trial. And I thought, look, he participated in a 9/11ing of America. Again, the 9/11 Twin Towers connections between the two. Even a $20 bill. He was arrested over a $20 bill, a counterfeit, a fake, a twin. But he was specifically arrested over that, and the $20 bill is known for having the Twin Towers on the back when you fold it up. But then also, if you look, some of these events, even like, was it Rodney King? Rodney King, 1 minute, 19-second beating, 33 hits. They've been foreshadowing these numbers, they've been using these numbers. Like 9/11, for example, is just one example of a PSYOP, just one where they have that code, but there are many. It's not the only one. It's like this tendency, I think, for a lot of the truth movement to focus on the big events, and they forget all these smaller events that use all the same sets of symbols and code. But I think it's important to note that it's a New Year's reference. All right, let us continue going through my Minds feed. Woman claims to have been trafficked by the Musk family and says that he's not the Antichrist, but he's here to present the mark, which is the X. So this might be actually true. Again, this is a woman claiming to have been trafficked by the Musk.
Jesus Christ, you saved me. I want to tell you something. I'm an old lady, kind of. I'm 55. I was born in San Francisco in 1965. When I was a girl, I was in San Francisco. I was procured and sent to work for a family. There were 3 generations. There was a boy, the boy's mother, and the boy's grandfather. They were coming from Africa.
Okay, Portal says probably a disgruntled housekeeper that didn't get paid. Yeah, I'm hearing. Honestly, my first thought, erotomania. She's boring and she's taking too long. Erotomania is where a person believes that some celebrity thinks about them, is in love with them. It's a stalker-like thing, but instead of like going to their house, they just have these elaborate fantasies.
And Jesus saved me.
But I mean, a lot of Musk's fans have erotomania, and they imagine they're all going to get crammed up into a big rocket someday, and they're all going to go to Mars and farm potatoes together. Anyway, I'm going to skip for now. But yes, if anyone's going to deliver the mark of the beast, it's him, and it's the X. If it wasn't the mask, if anything was an indicator of collective compliance to the devil, it could just as easily have been the mask, as Chief Crow, Mask of the Beast. Like the most, really the most significant typo of all time. Everyone's looking for the mark, and it ended up being a mask. So it caught everybody by surprise. Diana South says she's lying. Yeah, I could hardly listen to the whole thing. I'm going to just say she's making it up because she's in love with Musk. And it is a thing. Erotomania is a thing. This is an interesting one. This is a example of visual illiteracy. Now, it's a really famous UFO guy. I think his name is Uri Geller. And he says, "My dear friends, this photograph was taken by an Israeli lieutenant colonel who was a close friend. He was driving by a sensitive installation in southern Israel when he photographed this strange-looking object hanging in the sky, and he said it simply shot away. Just so you know, alien motherships lurking in our solar system are watching us with tiny probes. A draft paper by a Harvard scientist and the head of the Pentagon's UFO office has raised the idea of an alien mothership in the solar system sending probes, which it calls dandelion seeds, to explore all the planets. Please, try to decipher this strange object in the photo and let me know what you think it is." Now, these UFO believers will mock and laugh at anybody who says NASA's lying because they just fundamentally believe what they see if it's a photograph or if it's video. But this is, again, an example of how people just want to believe. So this gets shared by millions of people, retweeted, lots of hearts, people want to believe, and you zoom in, it does look like some kind of strange craft up there. But if you look at the ground, the photo is obviously distorted. Something's going on. The camera was being moved when they were driving. This van back here is 5 times larger than the car next to it. So it takes about 5 seconds to realize it's fake, and more specifically, it's a traffic light. It's a traffic light. That's all it is, with the post photoshopped out. Now, I'm bringing this up just because most people want to believe it. Mick West said, "It's a panorama photo taken from a moving vehicle. That's all. The light turned into a spaceship." So then the question here is, where did he get his story about his highly placed friend near a sensitive military installation? Now, what do you call this? Do you call this lying? Can we just be honest? I mean, is it lying? Is it confabulating? Or is it just his beliefs and it's sacrosanct and we can't criticize it? Or are all these UFO believers liars? Because I've been very critical of people who claim to have seen satellites in the middle of the night or space stations. Not that I think they're lying, but I think that they're using, or they're taking a leap of logic that they're perhaps, maybe they've observed something, but they're making a claim they cannot substantiate. And so I'm just trying to get more accuracy and objectivity. And I would say that the UFO cult, the UFO believers, don't have any objectivity. It's a belief system, and there's a huge difference. It's not a legitimate attempt to gather facts and understand the truth, is my point. And nor is the truther movement. But it's another example of not only visual illiteracy, but the will to believe that really has more to do with it than anything. Like, there are people who think that paper mache alien was real. Okay, now here's something interesting. Last year I watched Top Gun 2, and I was talking about the symbolism, how everything was about the Christ, the death, resurrection, and all the symbolism that is attached to that, like the rooster, a symbol of Christ, the phoenix, death, resurrection, and so on. One of the main characters in Top Gun 2 is named Rooster, whose father died 33 years prior. So it was like a second coming symbol. Then you had, of course, Phoenix, Tom Cruise, Thomas is twin, Cruise, twin cross, second coming. The whole movie was replete with 33s, chronologically 33 years apart between Top Gun 1 and 2. He's wearing the helmet HGU 33. We were just going through all these redundant references. Even the character who played Hangman, another Christ reference, played by an actor aged 33. So anyway, as I was researching this, I found out that the rooster is a symbol of Christ and resurrection, analogous to the phoenix. Well, check this out. In 2019, Notre Dame burned, the spire fell. We talked about the symbolism within that event, and they just installed a rooster on top of the new 96-meter spire. Now, 96, I don't know the meaning of it, although it figured prominently in the movie Leave the World Behind. Let me go ahead and play this, though. This is from CNN, a rooster installed atop Notre Dame. And you'll hear they even reference it being like a phoenix.
Flying high over the Paris skyline, a golden rooster is hoisted to its new perch on top of the newly rebuilt spire of Notre Dame Cathedral, scheduled to reopen in a year. The rooster, made of gold-coloured copper, is a crowning milestone in the church's reconstruction after a blazing fire destroyed the roof of the historic structure 4.5 years ago.
The rooster now means it's the very end of the rebuilding of the spire. It stands 96 meters tall, and once the roofers will have covered the spire, we'll be able to take the scaffolding off, and that's when Parisians and everyone who walks past will be able to see this flamboyant rooster.
The rooster is a long-time symbol of France, but this one, shining in the sunlight, is more like a phoenix rising from the ashes.
Sunlight, phoenix, rising from the ashes. Again, Notre Dame, the spire falling during that Holy Week. was replete with symbolism. Like, there was 3 bee habitats on the roof. Each one had 60,000 bees, 60, 60, 60, which survived the fire. There was a 66-minute window they talked about where they had an opportunity to save the crown of thorns. It was all just a ritualistic destruction of the thing, totally symbolic. It wasn't a real organic fire or blaze. I mean, they had just removed a lot of stuff before anyway. But they tore down the spire at sunset, which is interesting because the YouTube censorship thing was just like their censor bots were like, this is 9/11, this is misinformation. It's like, it's not 9/11, but they were connecting it as the spire fell. In fact, if you remember this fire, let's see if I can get that up there. They had an excuse for it. Here we go. Yeah, anyway, my point of it is, overall, they're bringing up the symbolism of the phoenix here. YouTube mistakenly flags YouTube Cathedral fire videos as misinformation. YouTube algorithm adds 9/11 explainer to Notre Dame fire. YouTube mistakenly links Notre Dame fire to September 11th. Something else about the fire, again, there was the 66 minutes that they highlighted where they had this window to break in. The 66 minutes that saved, I can find it. Here we go. They have the actual crown of thorns that Jesus wore, the corona. So there's another symbol there as well. Again, corona, the halo behind the Jesus or any of the saints, you'll see this halo. Well, the halo is, of course, the sun. And this sun corona stuff is very, very prominent. Here we go. The Notre Dame Cathedral fire, the 66 minutes that saved Notre Dame and its relics. And it was specifically a guy from the fire department that saved it that was on the news because he was previously seen at the Bataclan Eagles of Death Metal, where he had saved lives there, and previously he had saved lives at some kind of IED detonation in Afghanistan. So you had this person who was attached to multiple psyops who actually rescued the Crown of Thorns, if you want to believe this story. All right, let's continue. Yeah, golden rooster, phoenix, the burning of the cathedral, and I think it has other meanings as well, as we were looking into it. Because if you recall, as it was burning, they said that there was a sighting of a Knight Templar in the tower. And the Knights Templar burned at the stake, of course, came back. Lots of interesting stuff there because the beehives had similarly survived the fire. In fact, that was one of the main headlines. They were like, these beehives survived the fire. They said it was a miracle. And they actually saw them from space. It was the space station that said that we could see the beehives. Here we go. It's a miracle. Hundreds of thousands of bees survive. Bees living on Notre Dame Cathedral survived the blaze. And it was 3 groups, 180,000 grouped into 3 containers. So you have 60, 60, 60, which I think would tie in, of course, to the symbol of the beehive, which is another symbol for the Templars. The beehive has always been this Illuminati symbol, but you have the hexagon. And, of course, the hexagram with its equilateral triangles, 60, 60, 60. Survived the fire. But they made a big deal about this, quote, miracle. We were decoding this a few years ago, so it's interesting to see it's back in the news, and it's continuing with the same set of symbols. And this was Holy Week 2019, and this was following in the wake of the death of that rapper, Nipsey Hussle. Then you had the London Marathon. Interesting stuff all around. We'll have to revisit some of this stuff. But I remember that following summer solstice, there was a sighting of a phoenix above this abandoned Russian power plant in the Aurora Borealis. And I remember thinking then, this is foreshadowing something from Russia. Power station, Russia, Phoenix. Got me thinking then. I started commenting then that there was some kind of a foreshadowing for a blackout nuke. All right, let us continue. Alice in Chains Bro says we. Yep. Well, the rooster has announces the day, and I was doing some research into symbolism here. Like, what does the rooster represent in Christianity? Some see this rooster as symbol as Christ, resurrection. And then if you look too at the symbol of the phoenix, it too has a long time association in the early church with Christ. Early Christian writers construed the phoenix as a symbol of resurrection, but also of Christ. And this is where you get the correlation between the phoenix, Christ, the burning man, which are always correlated, like the burning man and the number 33, and of course the corona. And so the corona ties into this because the 33 has to do with ascension of consciousness, when Christ transcends the world or whatever, in the crown chakra. So the crown represents the illuminated consciousness. And I think the corona symbol itself, the corona could be a representative of the union of the sun and moon, representing the light of consciousness and the subconscious merged. It's like all alchemical stuff, mystery school stuff. But again, the burning man it's a symbol of the fire snake, the illuminated, the fire is a symbol of illumination up the spine, 33 vertebrae. So it's not literally a burning man. But it's interesting when you look back at, like, in 2019, and it was the same year as the cathedral burning. And so I say it was a really interesting year. In 2019, there was a 33-year-old who set himself on fire in front of the White House wearing a shirt that said USA. I'm like, what does that mean? He comes out in front of the ellipse there with the obelisk in the background, and TMZ's there ready to record it. It's like USA, and he's burning. You find out he's 33. Then I looked into it. 33 years prior, another guy did the same thing. And that was in 86. 86 is the year that the Burning Man Festival started. 2019 was the last one before they paused for a year because of COVID. And those, of course, take place in Black Rock City, Nevada. And Black Rock is often correlated with the same set of symbols. The Burning Man, the number 33. In fact, there's that rumor of the Black Rock in the middle of the North Pole with a 33-mile circumference. I didn't start it. John Dee and Mercator. Can't blame me. And Mercator should be unimpeachable. Mercator's where we get our Mercator projection, our concept of the globe, and he's a famous cartographer. The fact that he was reporting on a black stone in the center of the North Pole is kind of interesting. All right, let's continue here. Into the Beyond says, maybe Santa will bring me a wrench for Saturnalia. Yes. All right, let's continue. Girl says, there's something I wonder. Every time I scan the AM dial and catch Coast to Coast, has anyone ever challenged George Snorri on the Apollo hoax or ISS hoax? No, they're 100% gate kept. They will not go there. They're part of the fake reality reinforcement, and that's fine. If people want to bask in the blue pill reality, in the dream world, I have at it. Sleep. I'm not trying to wake up the blue pillars. Like, paranormal is cool, I like the concept, but the fact of it is, most paranormal stuff is government-created mythology that reinforces the dominant paradigm. It's not a legitimate attempt to get at truth. Wayne Dion says, the Notre Dame spire fell, last symbolically, if I recall. Yeah, it did, and I think it fell at sunset. And I think it all ties into the symbolism I brought up of the sun dying at sunset. And the sun god gets castrated. And the spire would represent that, which is why the obelisk spire symbolism is pretty obvious what it means. But this is a reoccurring theme and story. The best example of it that I can think of is the Luke Skywalker getting his hand chopped off by Darth Vader, and then he hangs in the cross in Cloud City before they reattach it. It's such a reoccurring theme. It's quite literally everywhere. Star Wars, if you look at it from that sense as allegory, it's about the battle between night and day and the personification of the sun as Luke the Skywalker and Saturn, who rules the night, as Dark Father Darth Vader, and their fight where their swords even cross, but Luke gets his hand chopped off. Well, what does the lightsaber represent? Well, light is, of course, life. Saber, it's pretty obvious, Freudian stuff, I guess, but when you get into it, Darth and his skull face represents the Saturnian sun god in death. That's why he says, "I'm your father," because it's all kind of this strange personification again of this reincarnating dead sun god. But it's part of our general indoctrination. You don't escape it. The space religion believers are the most indoctrinated believers of all. They don't know that Nasatology is a religion. Now, Coast to Coast is again, I would say it's gate kept. They did allow the flat Earth topic on once, but they treat it like it's toxic, like you can't even talk about it. But if something is just bad or wrong, you just need to bring it up and debunk it. It doesn't take very much if it's that easy to debunk. And it makes it seem like there's something they're hiding.
You are listening to Infinite Plane Radio. Stick around for live call-in shows. Stay for the music and recent replays. Join us at infiniteplane.live for 24/7 live chat with other listeners.